Hey guys, welcome back to the Engine25 YouTube channel. As you can see, I am unfortunately here by myself today. I, last weekend, recorded a podcast about Lord of the Rings of Power on Amazon Prime, and about 50% of the audio was totally unusable. I tried a couple of times this week to salvage what I can. Unfortunately, I've basically lost half the show, so this is where we are. Reason being, last episode was early August, work got busy, and then I went to Dragon Con, came home with two awesome souvenirs. The first one is appropriate to this podcast. Up the right way, it is. It's this really awesome artwork by an artist named Christian Wagoner. He has themed pieces, IP themed pieces, a lot of Star Wars stuff. This is his first Lord of the Rings piece. It's pretty awesome. It's art with paintings with characters reflected in glass or helmets or that kind of stuff. It's very cool. And the other I came home with was coronavirus. So I was laid up with COVID for about 2 weeks and then went right back into a work sprint. It has been one crazy event season, people catching up with all the things they missed during the pandemic. And I've said before, I'm an AV tech for events at a venue in Atlanta, and has been as busy as it ever has been since I took the job 5 years ago. So was very excited to come back in and do an episode, and I rushed everything together, apparently. Was so excited that I skipped a couple of steps, and I was listening to audio in the wrong piece of software, not in OBS, and the audio was just totally fucked up, and that's on me. So now that's out of the way, which sucks. And I had a new guest on the show. I do have some footage from the second half of the show was fixable, and I'll cut that in a little bit. A new guest named Katie, not the regular Katie who's on the show, but a huge fan of Lord of the Rings and solidly familiar with the lore. So she was great to have. But first, before we get to the portion with Katie, I'm just going to talk about some thoughts that were in the beginning part of the show that was lost. I liked the show. I'm not going to say I loved it. I'm not going to say it was great. There are other fantasy shows on right now, or actually at this point just ended about a week ago, that I would say are much better and have a clearer idea of their direction. And neither here nor there, we'll be reviewing House of the Dragon hopefully next week if life allows. But point is, there was quite a bit to like about Rings of Power. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's far from perfect. Main thing that I really enjoyed was I loved a lot of the characters. I love Durin and Disa. They are absolutely delightful. Their performances are great. They look fantastic. And Durin's relationship with Elrond, I think, was a real highlight of the show for me. I liked Galadriel. There's a lot of buzz from people who's saying they don't like her. She's a very different Galadriel than we get in the movies and the novels, and that's absolutely true. She's also kind of different from what we know about her in the lore around this time. But, and I may have said it later on in the part of the show that gets that I could save, but it is. I'm a movie and TV guy first before I'm a fan of the novels, and it's totally okay with me if you change stuff as long as you make it compelling. She's a little brooding, Galadriel is, but overall I liked her. I liked her dynamic with Halbrand. But yeah, she's just very angry and a very different character than we meet later. On principle, I don't have any problem with that. My problems with the show come in it's very deliberately paced, and sometimes that's okay. It's working for me in Star Wars Andor, but there are all these great characters on this show, these big personalities. It takes them 5 episodes to do anything. And that seems like a problem. There's just a lot of talking, but they're not accomplishing anything. If there was some the political intrigue, or if it seemed like Mordor was a more present threat than it is. I'm sorry, not Mordor, the Uruks. It's just Sauron. He was kind of more involved, but it's not. I'm also very tired. I'm recording this very late on a Sunday night and talking very softly so I don't wake my wife in the next room. So I apologize for that. But they just don't. I mean, that's it. I said it already. They don't do anything for so much of the show, and it's 8 hours. The Lord of the Rings theatrical version, actually, it's a little more than 8 hours. A couple of the episodes were a little longer than 60 minutes, but the Lord of the Rings theatrical versions are 9.5 hours. And, they obviously weren't going to save the world in the first season. That wouldn't make any sense, but it should seem like they're accomplishing more than they did, in my opinion. Visually, I think the show is absolutely stunning. The only thing I could say when we get that first big wide shot of Numenor is there's an eye-opener and no mistake. It's incredible. And Numenor, from a setting point of view, I think is the highlight of the season, for the reason that it feels lived in. There are people there. We're on the streets walking around, and we're seeing the peasants, and we're seeing the nobility, and people are talking to each other. That's something that I feel like we don't get as much of from the elves and the dwarves. And are there own? The elves have been going to Valinor, and that's fine, but are there only 6 elves left in Middle-earth? We have Elrond, gil-galad, Celebrimbor, Galadriel comes back, and then there's 3 other people that I'm not even sure have names. And it was the same with the dwarves. There's Durin and Disa, and Durin the Third, that's who's Durin's father, and then a couple of servants and miners. We don't really see Khazad-dûm. There's not a lot of texture there. We get 1 or 2 wide shots of a mine that seems really deserted. There aren't even people in there mining. I guess it's part of, I guess we see a city. It's an empty city, and we see 1 wide shot of it, and we don't explore it at all. We're always in the personal quarters of Durin, or in a mine. So it's, I guess the main takeaway is for everything it does really great, something it doesn't do that great. One more thing before I go to the other portion of the podcast with Katie is that I absolutely loved Adar, start to finish. If there's any one thing, and I can't believe I didn't mention it before, because he's probably straight up my favorite part of the show. He's this ancient elf character that was tortured and has become sort of a guiding light for the orcs. And he's a really interesting character, and the orcs respect him, but he's also terrifying. He's very, very smart, very goal oriented, and he's very willing to let things get messy to achieve those goals. But the orcs respect him, and he demands respects for the orcs. And that's in a very interesting way, I think. orc, the word orc, is an elvish word that is derisive and offensive to them, and we, in the movies a lot and a good chunk of the novels, like the orcs are treated like mindless rabble and like animals and like cannon fodder. And no, and not to say that they aren't violent and haven't done evil things. It would be a lie to say that those things hadn't been true, but they have a social structure and they have mutual respect for one another, and they're a people that live in this world, and they have their way of doing things. And there's just a moment with Adar that I thought was really powerful, where he doesn't even have to say all of that. It's just like, we prefer Uruk, and is our, he's pointing out that's our word. Orc is your word, and you use it in such a way that is, that is derisive. So it's, if there's any, I thought it was probably the smartest moment of the whole season. If the show's really trying to make a statement about the world that we live in, that's it. And that's, don't make assumptions about people, even if they're evil people, or even if they're allies. Maybe they're not even evil, but maybe they're on the other side of the line. And don't make assumptions. And again, I'm not defending the Uruk or the Orc. They murder, and they have done terrible, terrible things. But it's just something to think about. It's a little interesting thing that I was surprised to get. And Adar is played by Joseph Mall, who played Uncle Benjen in Game of Thrones, and the makeup work is stupendous, and his performance is fantastic, and probably my favorite part of the show. Also, spoiler alert, should have said that at the top. But yeah, we're going to go to the spoiler section now. I was able to save about 50% of the podcast because I realized while recording it that I was monitoring the wrong feed, and the one that was being recorded was garbage. And again, I wasn't able to fix it. But I do have about 30 minutes of material with Katie where we talk about the show and talk about some of these things I've mentioned in a little bit more detail. So enjoy, and thanks for watching. And if you like this, ring that bell. Here's the spoiler section with Katie Pearson. Thank you very much.
See it a little bit again in the Hobbit films when they go and her and Gandalf, or her, Saruman, and Elrond go fight the necromancer. Like, we see a little bit of that. Oh, okay, she is actually still a fighter, but to be able to see her purely in that mode is very unique, and I like the way that they did that. Like, she has a couple soft moments where we can see, oh, okay, that's the Galadriel that we're a little more familiar with, but this is serious Galadriel, and it's definitely cool to see more of that.
I agree, and the armor that she wears is dope.
I love it.
It's
so cool.
It's strong, and it's really elegant, but it's and the
very elegant.
And it's not like, I don't know. I've had this discussion with other people on the podcast before, but women in armor is always a weird conversation to have. But luckily, Lord of the Rings has always done it right. They're strong and powerful, and even maybe a little sexy, but it's not she's not showing her armor is effective. It looks.
Right. It's still armor.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
It's gonna actually do some good.
She can fight back, and she can take a hit, and it'll protect her from it.
Exactly. So I will say that one of the things I was not as thrilled with in that final episode was when they showed the 3 rings that were finished, and her ring looked completely different. You get to see it a little bit in the Lord of the Rings movies. And the one that they have in
the extended, the extended version of Fellowship of the Ring, she holds her ring out to Frodo, and it's the Gandalf has the fire ring. Which one does she wear?
She has Nenya.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like a really pretty kind of almost a flower look to it. But the one that they've got in the series looks completely different. And I was like, not sure how I feel about that. Maybe she makes it different later. I don't know. But the design of the ring itself was done differently for this series versus the extended edition.
It had a big, I'm looking at, and maybe I can try to show this on the show here, but I'm looking at Galadriel's ring from the movies, and it doesn't have like a big obvious gemstone in it. Like the ones in the show did. Yeah, it looks like a flower. It's like almost kind of dainty.
I feel like the stone is there. It's probably just like tucked underneath, and you can only see a little of it.
Okay, I am going. I thought it was a big deal. You know, the whole series, she has this dagger that she took from her brother, Finrod. And I thought it was like a really poignant moment when we had to melt it down to make the rings.
That was,
so it's like she has to,
was cool.
Yeah. Like, you know, and elves don't deal with death well because they don't encounter it that often.
It's like they're not used to it as much. But she being, you know, who she has been, like, she's had to deal with a large amount of death, but he was just very close to her in a way that I think no one else had been.
Here we go. This is a close-up of her ring from the movie. Here, I'll cover me up. And then it looks very different than the one on the show.
So like the stone is still there, but it's underneath that floral design. And so it looks daintier and much more elvish than the one
more elvish and more fitting of like a queen. Like it's not garish.
Yeah. And especially given the fact that that's not who Galadriel is. Like, not one for the big, flashy, showy stuff. She's a relatively simple needs kind of person. But yeah, the moment where she has to like sacrifice the last physical reminder of her brother in order to do this, to protect like all the people across all the lands. I'm just like, that's very poignant. I like the way they did that.
And it comes around like in the lore, what we know is Sauron under a different name. It's Anatar, I think, and it means it's Sindarin for. Well, I'm not going to tell you. It's Elvish. I'm not going to try to know what Elvish language it is because when I get it wrong, I'll get a comment.
But he's got two different ones.
Yeah. Sindarin and Quenya, but it's ancient Elvish for Lord of Gifts, right? And he meets Celebrimbor in the lore and kind of tricks him into making the rings. And these first three rings, similar to the they're not corrupted yet. And that's why. That's why the elves still have them later on, because they haven't destroyed them because they're not dangerous. But Celebrimbor kind of gets greedy, and he will continue to make rings. And we may or may not see Sauron again under a different guise. He's a shapeshifter. He uses different names all through the history. So it's different looks. Yeah. They're already filming season 2. We're definitely going to see him again.
Yeah.
But Celebrimbor is the smith that makes most of the rings, and then Sauron makes the one ring secretly. And they
he
found
that in his nice little mountain.
Yeah, and they found like a kind of cool way to hint at that without it doesn't really match up, but it's kind of fun. They've discovered that Mithril has this mystical power that can replenish the light of the elves, which is like that's what they call the power that makes them immortal, basically. To kind of oversimplify things. Yeah, and the dwarves have discovered that they are sitting on quite a bit of this mithril metal. So, Elrond goes over to meet his old buddy Durin and try to entreat with the dwarves to let them mine the metal so that they can help the elves. And then Durin's father, because mining this particular metal is very dangerous, he doesn't want to risk dwarven lives to save elves, because he doesn't feel like elves have ever given him anything, basically. They're a little bitter about the elves, but so they turn him down, and then blanking on the name, Halbrand comes to Celebrimbor, and it says, okay, so what if you make an alloy with the mithril? Because they have about this much of it. It's like a little chunk.
Nugget.
Yeah. But what if we try to mix it with something else, and then take a little bit of time, and it doesn't work with steel, or it doesn't work with this or that. Yeah. But if they discover if they're trying not to be too forceful with it, and maybe if they mix it with elvish silver, it will, maybe it'll make something special. And that's how they land on melting the dagger down, because it's the only source of elvish silver that's left in Middle Earth, because the rest of it has gone
elvish
over.
Silver and gold.
Yeah. The rest of it they've already sent to Valinor overseas.
Dumb choices. Should have kept.
Yeah. So it's an important moment for Galadriel. She finally has to move on, and it's one of the things that's going to make her into the witch queen that we see later on. They're like I said,
right now we've just got the warrior.
Yeah, and elves don't handle death very well, and this is a big step in that direction, at least for Galadriel's character, and she's going to lead elves in the next several years to kind of follow. But I have a question. Through a lot of the series, a lot of the chatter online was, why is Galadriel giving sexy eyes to Halbrand? She has a husband back home. And then and then she tells us in episode 7 that Celeborn has died. What do we think about that?
Presumed dead.
Yeah.
Because they don't specifically straight up say, oh no, he died. It's just she hasn't seen him since he left, so he's missing. Presumed dead. And I did have that same thought when I was watching. I was like, by this point she's supposed to be married?
Yeah.
Pretty sure. But
I don't remember if they're supposed to have had a child already, because Elrond's eventual wife is Galadriel's daughter. Arwen's mother is Galadriel's daughter.
Yeah.
Eventually, and I don't know if that should have happened yet at this point, but
I think if I remember correctly, it's been a little while since I've looked at the lore. My younger brother was like obsessed with it. He read the whole Silmarillion, and I only got a few chapters in. So a lot of this is just kind of like little things that I've seen, but I think they did have a child maybe by this point. So that still is in question of how the show is going to handle it, if they're even going to have that happen yet. But like I do know why the criticism about her character in regards to like, isn't she supposed to have a husband and a child? Like, is she out here just fighting constantly? Husband is missing in war, presumed dead. They don't mention the child. So like that kind of adds to her, well, I've got nothing left to lose. Let's just keep going. Kind of personality that she has developed for herself during this time.
And that makes a lot of sense. I would say that if she's so hung up on Finrod's death, she would probably feel similarly about her husband that went off to war and never came back.
A little bit.
Who knows? It's just he's definitely not dead. Like they're gonna, I think, sometime in the next year.
He exists in the movies. I would hope that they would fix that.
We're gonna get an announcement that says Celeborn has been cast for season 2, and it's not gonna be that far from now, probably. Then again, they held a lot of stuff about this series pretty close until very soon.
Very close.
Yeah, like we didn't know she was playing Galadriel until this summer, right?
Yeah.
Even though she appeared in the trailer, and they had that really awesome that series of posters that was like everyone in their armor with their weapon. Do you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was really cool. I like that one.
But it told us very little about this person's an elf, and that one's obviously the bad guy, and this and that. But
right. Yeah, you're a dwarf.
So let's speculate a little bit going forward. The king of Numenor is very ill, and his daughter has been, they call her the Queen Regent because she's been kind of ruling because he's been on his deathbed for some time. And
by the end of the series, that he is dead.
Yes. But the Miriel and the Numenorian army, they've gone off to war in Middle Earth, and before they return, Eärien, who's a character created for the show, it's Isildur's sister, daughter of Elendil, sister of Isildur, but both of those men will eventually be kings of Gondor. She I'm not remembering why. It's been over a week since I watched it. Why she was up talking to the king, but she was tending to the king.
They were going to make a memorial statue thing.
Yes. This Farazan guy he's obsessed with.
Seems sketchy.
Yeah, he's super sketch, and he's like obsessed with immortality. And anyway, this Eärien person who is fairly innocent up to this point. She's tending to the king, and he's in an age-induced dementia, or like maybe a painkiller-induced something, and he's babbling. He mistakes her for his daughter Miriel, who's the queen, and points her up to the staircase, and she goes up to the top of the she goes up the stairs to the top of the tower, and she finds a palantir, which is one of the seven seeing stones. Yeah. And what we know in Lord of the Rings later on is that there are supposed to be 7 of them. Many of them have been lost for a while. Gondor has one, Saruman has one, and Sauron has one. And the other ones are missing by the time of Lord of the Rings. And this one that we see here, it could be one of those 3, or it could be one of the ones that gets lost. Spoiler alert, later on, this dream that Miriel is having about Numenor getting flooded, that's going to happen. That's a thing. It's Numenor is Atlantis.
That's how Numenor is destroyed.
Yeah. That's why it doesn't exist later. But so it could be lost at sea or something. But what we do know is some bad people have seeing stones. So what do we think is going to happen to poor Eärien? She's not a lore character, so there isn't any writing about her from Tolkien, at least.
We can kind of do whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, because they've spent a lot of time on her character,
they have
comparatively, and so clearly she's going to have some importance in the next season, especially now that she has found that palantir. And I'm just curious whether it will be so she's going to become very helpful to the queen, or she's going to, because we also don't know at this time whether those, bad people have these yet. We don't know if Saruman has that yet. We don't know if Saruman's even on planet yet, but we don't know if Sauron has the seeing stone yet, or if he finds that a little bit later.
Right. We don't know where he gets it from. Mordor was just kind of so Barad-dûr doesn't exist yet. He doesn't have his fortress.
The mountain. Which that was a very cool moment in that episode. I was like, oh.
It was, I was a little disappointed that this Morgul sword we've had this whole time, they kept calling the orcs kept calling it a key, and it turned out it's just a key. You stick the sword in the stone and twist it. But no, that's
and boom, mountain.
They've been digging these trenches throughout the series up to this point. The orcs have under command of this Adar guy who claims that he had killed Sauron already.
Yeah.
excuse me.
Which clearly he was mistaken.
Yeah. But so he and he's. Oh, I want to talk about Adar for a second before I go on to the eruption. I love this moment where it's like we prefer Uruks. Like orc is an elvish word that is derisive and offensive, and they are and they are a people that have at least claimed to have been misled. They were tortured by Morgoth, and they became orcs, and they became this mutilated race.
Other creatures.
Yes. But they are not like the elves kind of talk about them like they're animals, and Adar is he is not that, and is trying to prove that other Uruk, they're intelligent, and they're some of them have families or whatever, so it's I'm not gonna, not that they haven't committed heinous acts in the name of evil, but they
well, who hasn't these days?
Yeah. well, but no, it's just a really, really interesting dynamic, I thought, because they're orc is an elf created word that they find offensive, and just the fact that they are a people that can that they can find it offensive. It's just it's
and like Adar is definitely a much more elvish Uruk.
Absolutely,
like, he still has so much of that.
And he's very old too. Like he may have been around when Morgoth was defeated. Like it's probably the biggest.
Him to actually be Sauron.
Well, he was the obvious choice, and because of that, I didn't want it to be true. I like that they are. It's probably the thing that I think was the most effective about the show. Honestly, is their refocusing how we feel about orcs, and what we think about orcs, because we were probably thinking about them the way the elves think about them. And
that's the way they were portrayed in the films. Yeah,
they've always been the little creepy minions of the Dark Lord. So it's and really what they are is a people that were grossly mistreated and and behave the way they do because they don't have any other way at this point, so it's it's just a reframing of the way that we've been taught to think about orcs and goblins, and I thought it's very cool.
I like this.
And then so Adar has had this plan where they're building trenches and covering them because the orcs can't travel under the sun.
Right.
And then it turns out that they're building trenches because they're going to break this dam. Then the trenches are going to flood water into this big lava cavern and cause an eruption, which is actually a thing, by the way.
For geology nerds out there, that's real.
Yeah. If you add a lot of water on top of a lot of lava, it reacts explosively. So they cause what will eventually become Mount Doom. Right now, it's called Orodruin, which is it's the Elvish word.
Elvish word. Yeah.
It makes the mountain explode, and then it rains fire all over Mordor.
Rains fire and ash.
Yep,
and suddenly there's no sun there anymore.
A lot of people get hurt, and then now the orcs can roam freely in the Southlands.
Exactly.
And
it becomes a lot more like the Southlands that we're familiar with.
Yep. And it's a little, I didn't like the moment where they had like this, they show the map and then like the text comes off the map and it says the Southlands and then it turns into Mordor. Like, we didn't need that. Like I was like, we knew. We understand. We get it, bro. But
I did like how that symbol that they brought up like at the beginning of the series, you eventually find out that it's not like a symbol, it's part of a map.
Yeah.
And so literally my dad has like a small framed copy of the map that I think my brother got him for Christmas. And it was sitting like on the fireplace at home because I was, back home at one point, and it's when my dad would sit down and watch the first 2 episodes. And so like I'm sitting there like looking at the map and I'm like, I could see the symbol. But it was a cool little reveal because
Yeah.
it gave you like,
It's like
oh my god,
the mountain
right,
is
this that
here,
area.
and the key hole's over here, and if you do all these things at once,
things will explode.
hooray! And then there's fire, and everyone's sad. And then that largely like kind of scatters the Numenorians, who were at that point, being vaguely pretty successful in their campaign to reclaim the Southlands. But it's the queen gets blinded, and it's not good. Did Isildur never came back, right?
Right. No,
yeah, so
he's missing. He's
in
considered
theory,
dead right now.
yeah. But Elendil thinks
I think
that
the horse went to go find him. Like when the horse wouldn't get on the ship,
Mhm.
Elendil just let him go, and I'm pretty sure that's where he was running off to. Because like that scene where they're talking about how like in battle these particular horses will form very strong bonds with their rider to the point where they can feel their emotions. So I'm like pretty sure that the horse was like, no, dude, he's alive, I swear. So that's what I think happened with the horse. Is he went to go find Isildur.
right,
And obviously Isildur lives because kind of big in the history.
yeah,
so.
he's important. Even though you like, depending on who you ask, he shouldn't be alive yet. But that's Numenorians live longer than regular humans.
That's true. I mean, even Aragorn lived a very, very long time compared to normal humans.
300 years old or something. Like he ruled for like almost 200 years.
By the time that he's like in the films, he's like 70s, 80s.
Yeah, he's 87. Extended version of the Two Towers, he says he's 87.
Okay.
So he's older than Theoden at that point.
Yeah, like he had fought with Theoden's father.
Yeah.
So, like, they live a while and they look young.
Any closing thoughts? Anything else that we want to touch on? The show's gorgeous. There are a lot of things that we like. There are definitely some things that I wasn't so big on, but I also don't think like it's better than the internet says it is. At least in my opinion.
I mean, like there's hopes that I have for the next season. Like I'm very much hoping that we do get a lot more information about the stranger, like better detail about who he is. And I'm loving the fact that like he and Nori are off on a little adventure.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, she's the first of the little hobbity type to go on an adventure, because it doesn't sound like the Harfoots really did adventures either. Like
they're nomads, but yeah, they're we go here because
it's nomads.
Yeah, we go here because apples bloom in the fall, and then we go here because that's where it's warm in the spring, and they have like a path that they follow, and they don't really deviate.
Yeah, and so I'm excited to see how that goes. I do hope that we get more development because like we do see Isildur develop a little bit over the course of this season, from just like little daydreamy kid who doesn't want to be a soldier to going, fighting, doing very well. And like we know he becomes someone who is, very skilled.
Mm-hmm.
And he does, screw up quite a bit later, but I'm interested to see also how Elendil becomes king. Like, is he going to marry somebody to become king? Is it going to be a vote kind of situation? Because he's supposed to be a king.
It's true. Gondor doesn't really exist at this point.
Sure.
And that, that's because there should have been kings before Elendil, but like it's all interesting stuff, and I'm here for the ride. If they're gonna, if they want to change it up, that's fine with me. And it's
as long as they don't like aggressively and dramatically deviate.
And even depending on what that human history is not well recorded at this point, except with elves it is, with humans it is not, except for Numenor, and a lot of the Numenorian history is going to get lost when Numenor falls. So so it's like, okay. I think it's basically
Good to know that.
mythology, and there's a lot of room
Yeah.
for them to do for them to shake it up
Play
a little,
around
you know. And that's where I stand on it, at least.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
I am reasonably sure that it's the first episode in a little bit, and I'm reasonably sure that it's okay. Audio is always the thing that is weird,
Fair.
but and yes, so who knows when the next season is coming out? But
I hope they don't make us wait forever, because
yeah, they're filming it now. That'll take 6 months,
Right.
and then it'll be a year after. So it's probably 2024. I don't know for sure, but that's how it works.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Anyway, I hope to have you back, and thanks everybody for
Absolutely.
watching. If you
Thanks, guys.
if you like this, if you like Lord of the Rings, if you like other nerdy type stuff, or you like movies, I'm going to try to start doing an episode every week again. Sometimes I don't get there, but thanks for watching Engine25 reviews, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.